Title: Light Ratios and Contrast Control. Module: Advanced Studio Lighting Control. Light ratios describe the balance between the key light and the fill light in a studio setup. This balance is one of the most important factors in determining the mood, depth, and visual impact of a photograph. While lighting direction defines where shadows fall, light ratios define how strong those shadows appear. In simple terms, a light ratio tells you how bright the highlight side of the subject is compared to the shadow side. A low ratio means the difference between light and shadow is small. The image appears soft, smooth, and evenly lit. A high ratio means there is a strong difference between light and shadow, creating deep contrast and dramatic intensity. Neither approach is correct or incorrect. Each ratio creates a different emotional language. For example, a 1-to-1 ratio means both sides of the subject are lit almost equally. This produces a very flat and even appearance, often used in high-key photography or commercial work where clarity and openness are important. A 2-to-1 ratio introduces a gentle difference between light and shadow. The shadow side is slightly darker, but still retains plenty of detail. This is often used for natural-looking portraits because it resembles soft daylight conditions. A 4-to-1 ratio creates a more noticeable contrast. The shadow side becomes clearly defined, and the image begins to feel more sculpted and dimensional. This ratio is commonly used in fine art portraiture where depth and mood are important. A 8-to-1 ratio produces strong, dramatic lighting. The shadow side becomes significantly darker, and only essential details remain visible. This is often used for emotional, cinematic, or high-impact artistic images. As the ratio increases, emotional intensity also increases. Lower ratios feel calm, safe, and approachable. Higher ratios feel dramatic, intense, or mysterious. Understanding light ratios allows you to move beyond guessing and begin controlling mood with precision. To adjust ratios in a studio, you are essentially controlling the brightness of the fill light compared to the key light. Increasing fill light reduces contrast and lowers the ratio. Decreasing fill light increases contrast and raises the ratio. You can also influence ratios by changing distance. A closer fill light becomes stronger, reducing contrast. A more distant fill light becomes weaker, increasing contrast. Another important concept is that ratios are not only technical, they are perceptual. The same lighting setup may appear different depending on skin tone, background color, clothing, and camera exposure. This is why photographers must learn to observe rather than rely only on numbers. In fine art figure photography, contrast control is especially important because it directly affects how the human form is perceived. High contrast lighting emphasizes structure, muscle, and shape. Low contrast lighting emphasizes softness, smooth transitions, and gentle curves. A skilled photographer does not always aim for maximum contrast or minimum contrast. Instead, they choose the level of contrast that best supports the emotional story. One common mistake is overusing fill light until all shadows disappear. While this may seem technically correct, it often removes depth and makes the image appear flat and lifeless. Another mistake is using too little fill without intention, resulting in overly harsh shadows that hide important details. The goal is balance, not equality. Contrast should always serve meaning. When you understand light ratios, you gain control over how the viewer feels when they look at your image. You are no longer just placing lights in a room. You are designing emotional structure. Light becomes not only illumination but interpretation. And through that control, your photography becomes more deliberate, more expressive, and more refined.